travelers, I'm thrilled to bring you this special Dragon Age Day edition of Travel Rebooted. Dragon Age Day was originally created by some of the finest artists and scribes in Thedas to honor the most inspiring people and events of the century. It takes place every year on our December 4th, late Harvestmere on the Thedosian calendar. To celebrate the event, I'm reviewing a special trip I took about 10 years ago to a place few travelers ever get to see, Orzammar, the glittering underground capital of the Dwarven Kingdom. So without further ado, let's go! In some of my other videos, I've talked about the harsh and beautiful Frostback Mountains. The northern end of this mountain range holds the main gateway to the Dwarven Kingdom. In theory, one could find a less official path into Orzammar by using the Deep Roads, the system of underground highways built by the ancient dwarves. At one point, they connected all the cities in the vast Dwarven Empire, so they run under most of Thedas. But given that the deep roads are crumbling from long disrepair and are also plagued with murderous darkspawn, that approach is definitely not recommended. That said, getting in the official way is no walk in the park either. The dwarves are notorious for being isolationists. But if you keep your ear to the ground, sometimes you hear about special events when the rules ease up a little. I managed to plan my trip during a celebration in honor of the king's daughter, but I could never have predicted just how awesome it would end up being, especially knowing what came afterward. The first sign I was getting close was a huge stone arch adorned with intricate metalwork and geometric designs. Further ahead, statues of dwarven guards flanked a stone bridge, and then the massive city gates came into view. A clearing out front was filled with merchants from all over Thedas, but I was too impatient to get inside. The metal doors were at least 20 feet tall, and the stone around them had beautiful designs carved into every surface. I'm pretty sure the gate guards were amused by the nerdy tourist girl gawking and taking pictures, but I forgot to care when I got my first glimpse of the city. Where I'm from, the only time you see lava is in the movies, or on that one level everybody hates in video games. But in Orzammar, lava, or I guess technically magma, is everywhere. The dwarves use it to heat the city from below, which I guess didn't surprise me that much, but they also use it for decoration. I mean, I don't want to be a nervous Nelly, but that just does not seem safe. I can only assume dwarven builders have some nifty lava safety tricks that go beyond our normal laws of physics. That being said though, it looks so freaking cool. The first room past the gate is called the Hall of Heroes, and it is a masterpiece of stone and fire. Tall pillars with lava channels support the soaring cavern roof, and both sides of the room hold shimmering orange-gold lava falls. In the midst of all that liquid light, stylized statues of solid stone represent dwarven paragons, or dwarves throughout history who've been recognized for extraordinary contributions to their society. It's designed to emphasize the history and might of the Dwarven Empire, and it does its job well. I had stopped to take a photo of the first statue, representing the most recent paragon, a woman named Branka, when I heard a voice behind me. "Don't believe the hype," a woman said. She was a lot less attractive in person and a dozen times as obnoxious. Dwarves around me looked appalled, but I couldn't help but laugh. I turned and found a woman in elegant armor grinning up at me, followed by a few resigned-looking guards. "First time in Orzammar, I take it?" she asked. I told her it was, and that I was a travel writer hoping to capture all the city had to offer. She got this wicked look in her eyes and said, "Then I'll bet you need a tour guide." One of her guards was like, my lady, Prince Trian was already annoyed we didn't go straight to the feast. If he hears you're showing some human around the city, he'll be livid." She just grinned wider and said, "Yeah, I know." She asked my name and then introduced herself as Sereda, as in Sereda Idukin, as in the king's daughter, the one the whole festival was for. I frantically tried to remember if bowing or curtsying was the right etiquette for dwarven royalty, and she just laughed. "Relax, human. My brother might be a fan of all the bootlicking, but I'm not. So you're Angelica, I'm Sereda, and we're gonna have a fabulous time scandalizing the nobles." And with that, the freaking Princess of Orzammar led me into her city. Sometimes when I visit unusual places, I get what I call the Toto effect. That moment where it hits me that I'm not in Kansas anymore, so to speak. The first thing you see in Orzammar is a sculpture that looks like someone read about a tree once and then tried to make it out of granite, which, to be fair, is probably accurate. Beyond that, a massive stone bridge crosses a steaming lake of lava toward a giant face carved into the rock, and you'd think those things would have redlined my Toto meter, but this time it was triggered by something a lot more mundane. See, by human standards, I'm not particularly tall. But in Orzammar, I was at least a head taller than literally everyone. It was so weird. I would have been afraid of hitting my head a lot, but luckily Dwarven architects seem to have a go big or go home philosophy. So my delicate noggin remained unsmacked. The bridge across the fiery death lake led to a sort of arena called the Provings, but Sarita wanted to show me the rest of the commons before we headed in there. The first shop to the left was called Jannar Armorers, which, as one might guess, sold armor. The merchant just about had to pick himself up off the floor when he saw the princess stroll in. The same thing happened at the weapons stall across the way, but other than looking at me and rolling her eyes when the guy wasn't looking, Sarita took it in stride. It might seem strange that the first shops we saw were selling weapons and armor, but it makes sense for 3 reasons. 1, the dwarves are world-renowned for their skill in metalworking, and dwarven armor is sought after by people all over Thedas. 2, the dwarven justice system is partially based in ritual combat, where the winner of a fight is seen as having the ancestors' favor. And 3, the dwarves always have to be ready for a fight. Of the 12 major cities that once made up their empire, only 2 are left, Orzammar and Kalsharak far to the north. All the rest were overrun by darkspawn centuries ago, and it's only through constant vigilance that Orzammar doesn't end up the same way. Besides fighting and metalworking, the other thing stereotypical dwarves are always ready to do is drink, and we saw that at our next stop, Capster's Tavern. The finely sculpted chairs and tables made an odd counterpoint to the stalactites hanging overhead, but it showcased the rune's natural origin in what I was coming to recognize as a key Orzammar aesthetic. At first I thought it was weird that all the furniture was made of stone, but then I realized an underground culture would have a hard time getting lumber. It seemed necessity, as always, was the mother of invention. I was reminded just who I was sitting with when the staff fell all over themselves to bring their princess complimentary drinks. They offered me a dwarven ale, but Sarita stopped me, saying she didn't think I'd want to spend the rest of my visit passed out on the floor. Back outside, we visited another little outdoor stall, and I bought a couple of souvenirs as gifts for friends. I noticed a nearby passage leading farther south, and when I asked where it led, the dwarves all looked uncomfortable. Finally, the head guard, Gorim, told me it was the way to Dust Town, a ramshackle ruin that was home to casteless criminals. I was strongly advised not to go there for my own safety, and so we turned back the way we came. Oh, I should explain about the dwarven caste system. See, according to legend, their empire was originally founded by 7 brothers, who each chose a specific role for themselves and their descendants. Dwarves, being a culture defined by tradition, have kept this system ever since. Depending on the caste of their same-gendered parent, dwarves are born as nobles, warriors, artisans, smiths, miners, merchants, or servants. And that's what they generally remain for their whole lives. The remaining dwarves are considered casteless. Being stripped of caste is a major punishment in dwarven society, as it means the dwarf and all their descendants, forever, will be forced to live in Dust Town, their faces branded at birth to mark their status. They're not allowed to get any legitimate jobs, and according to the keepers of dwarven history, they don't even exist. So, obviously, that sucks. It's one thing to punish a criminal, but a whole other thing to doom their innocent children. There are people trying to change the system, but it's a slow process. In the meantime, visitors are advised not to bring up the subject, since it's a sensitive and divisive issue. Anyway, on the other side of the cavern, we visited Vigor's Imports, the stall of a shield merchant, and Garrison's luxury goods shop. He sold a variety of items, some enchanted with lyrium, a substance mined by the dwarves and used by dwarven enchanters, as well as mages and templars on the surface. It is highly dangerous in its raw form, which becomes obvious when you talk to the merchant. He got it in his bloodstream once and has had trouble focusing ever since. So remember, travelers, no matter how pretty the glowy blue rocks might be, look with your eyes, not your hands. We stopped for a snack at a little open-air food stall. or the dwarven version of open air anyway. Feeling brave, I decided to try the roast nug, and I have to admit, it wasn't half bad. I mean, it's not something I'd want every day, but as long as I don't have to look at the creepy little fingers on those weird things, I call it a win. At that point, Sarada's guard said it was time to head over to the provings, and she explained a little about them as we walked across the freaky lava death bridge. Some provings were to defend one's honor or settle an argument that couldn't be resolved any other way, and those were often fought to the death. The dwarven ancestors were thought to have favored whoever won the fight, and their decisions were final. Other provings, like the one we were going to, were held in honor of a person or event, and usually only went till first blood, something Sarada reassured me about when she saw my look of alarm. I'm not typically one for stuff like boxing or MMA, but I gotta admit, watching the proving was really cool. I got to sit in the roomy royal seats, but the rest of the place was packed shoulder to shoulder, and the excitement of the crowd was contagious. That was nothing, though, compared to when Sarada herself decided to join in the competition. At first, I was super nervous for her, but after I watched her absolutely demolish everybody she fought, I just about cheered myself hoarse. Hanging out with a princess was cool, but hanging out with a princess who was also a badass was awesome. After the proving was over, we left and headed over to a set of fancy doors. Gorham said it had been a pleasure to meet me, but they had to get back over to the Diamond Quarter for the big feast. Sarada stopped him and was like, "No need to explain. She can see it for herself when we get there." He blinked a couple of times and finally said, "As you wish, my lady." And that's how I found myself strolling off to the palace to have dinner with royalty. Tune in for part 2, and I'll tell you all about my adventures with Orzammar's Rich and Famous. Thanks for watching. To see more travel highlights of virtual destinations, don't forget to like and subscribe. And if there's a game location you'd like me to visit, tell me in the comments below. If you enjoy what I do, feel free to support me on Ko-fi.com or check out my travel stickers, postcards, and other designs on Redbubble. Links are in the description. Safe journeys, and see you next time on Travel Rebooted.